Hello again, everyone. We appreciate you taking time to join with us today. I'll review the October cargo volume here at the Port of Los Angeles. I'll also share data from the Signal, which gives us a good look at the remainder of year 2020. First, I'd like to introduce some special guests that will be joining me in a few moments. We're privileged to have key international longshore and warehouse union leaders with us today. And I'd like to introduce Frank Ponce De Leon, ILWU Coast Committeeman; Ramon Ponce De Leon, ILWU Local 13 President in charge of the Longshore and Mechanics; Mike Podue, Local 63 President in charge of the Marine Clerks; and Danny Miranda, Local 94 President representing the Foremen. All four of these gentlemen come from our harbor area. They care deeply about this port and community. I'm very grateful to all of you to be with us today. It is the men and women of the ILWU who make this complex run every day, and I look forward to your thoughts and observations in just a few moments. Allow me to address an issue that's been drawing significant attention at the Port of Los Angeles, throughout supply chains on the West Coast, and across the globe. For several months now, a historic surge of cargo volume has been placing unprecedented stress on every aspect of the logistics industry, from manufacturing facilities to store shelves and everywhere in between. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic earlier this year led to a plummet in cargo volume, as much of the global economy ground to a halt. However, all of that has changed since factories restarted in China and other Asia locations, and the severe backlog of cargo that sat idle in warehouses began to move over the past several months, driven by strong growth in consumer buying, along with other omni-channel distribution networks. Since the summer, we have moved to the other end of the spectrum when it comes to trade volume. We're now experiencing a surge in imports as businesses make up for lost time and race to restock shelves and warehouses ahead of the holiday shopping period. China in particular is fueling this wave after months of economic lockdown. It is a recipe for cargo arriving at our shores and straining our goods movement infrastructure. As you can see from drone footage taken just yesterday by Los Angeles Port Police, marine terminals are getting squeezed from both sides. Vessels are coming in very full and at a faster pace. They're also looking to turn back to Asia as quickly as possible. On the other side, we see trucking and railroad resources that are stretched thin, and local warehouses that are at or near capacity and experiencing reduced staffing due to physical distancing requirements. This has dramatically slowed the ability to absorb cargo and return equipment, such as chassis and containers, back to the system. With cargo coming into terminals much faster than it's going out, containers are accumulating in large numbers, with fewer and fewer places to put them. The volume makes it difficult and time-consuming to move cargo through the marine terminal yard. This, in turn, backs up the operation and slows down the unloading of shipments from vessels onto terminals and limits the availability of vessel berths. For example, container dwell time on terminals has doubled during this import surge to 5 days. Street dwell times, while waiting for warehouse space to open up, has also doubled to 7.1 days. And truck turn times are also going up because it takes more time to find containers inside the terminals. In the midst of this cargo crunch, the ILWU workforce is out doing an outstanding job in handling as much volume as they can. Despite their great effort, it's simply impossible for all of us to keep pace with this volume of cargo. The spike in imports is unprecedented in scale, breaking new records on a monthly basis. Compounding the problem is the fact that as containers mount, they need to be moved and rearranged often in the yards. Container cargo is sometimes stacked 6 units high. Multiple moves, which means time and money, are required to get the boxes in the middle or at the bottom of those stacks. This puts additional demands on skilled labor working at our ports, particularly skilled crane operators. Empty containers are in enormous demand at origin, creating a push to hurriedly fill vessels with as many exports and empties as possible before returning to Asia. Thus, they can reload and immediately send back full to the United States. This surge may slow just a bit in December, but will likely pick up leading into the Lunar New Year holiday in February. We here cannot wait to address these problems. Today, I'll outline new strategies that the Port of Los Angeles is implementing to help mitigate these issues. You also may recall earlier this year, the Port of Los Angeles convened a West Coast coalition of business interests and stakeholders to deal with the question of competitiveness. We need to use this group and all of its members to double down our collective efforts to help develop solutions to today's challenges. 3 million jobs and nearly $400 billion in economic activity throughout the country are tied to the efficient flow of goods through the San Pedro Bay Port Complex. We are committed to working together across sectors to improve operations every day. And in Los Angeles, here's what we need to focus on to move the needle. First, I've been advocating for a comprehensive digitization strategy throughout the complex for many years. We need to use real-time data to make smart decisions. We owe that to our stakeholders and customers. We have seen signs of great traction with the Port Optimizer, the Signal, and other data points here in LA. We need to be doing this more and deeper with digitized data. That's why today, the Port of Los Angeles, in cooperation with our partners at Wabtec, is launching the Return Signal, another service of the Port of Los Angeles. This one is designed to help our trucking community know when and where they can return empty containers throughout the San Pedro Bay complex, thus enhancing the probability of dual transactions. Building on the data and success of the Optimizer along with the Signal, the Return Signal is built on algorithms that will be updated every 5 minutes. We have made it simple to search, filter, and customize data. Additionally, historical data points will be available shortly. And all of this information, a service of the Port of Los Angeles, is free and available beginning today by signing up at portoptimizer.com. Second, we are focused on creating operational efficiencies. Presently, we have an ocean carrier incentive program to drive more cargo here to Los Angeles. Now that we have that, we need to incentivize increased fluidity at the terminal level. In a few weeks, Port staff will present to the Los Angeles Harbor Commission 2 unique programs for cargo terminals. One is a turn time incentive that will pay for every minute turn times are reduced. The faster a truck gets in and out of our terminal, the more the terminal will be monetarily rewarded. Additionally, our board will consider a dual transaction incentive. That means for every trucker that comes to the port, terminals will be monetarily rewarded to make sure the trucks enter the gate with a container and also leave with one. We believe these financial incentives will in part play a role in assisting to improve efficiency. We also have a blueprint to get the chassis off marine terminals to a neutral site near dock with the appropriate business rules. This could open up an additional 50 to 80 acres of space on our waterfront in Los Angeles. We are also making additional parcels of property available on a short-term basis to stakeholders in and around the port so they have the maneuverability around the terminals during this time period. And third, although this is not a quick fix, we need a cohesive national export strategy. The widening trade gap has impacted cargo flow, particularly here in the United States. Let's consider an export program that focuses on the competitiveness of our agriculture, manufacturing, and automotive industries, and then build from there. We're at a point today where shipping line companies believe it makes more economic sense to send empty containers back to Asia rather than wait for loaded shipments with American exports. We need to fix this round-trip economics that are hurting the American exporter. With all of this as a backdrop, let's now look at the port's October volume. For the month, the Port of Los Angeles processed more than 980,000 20-foot equivalent units. That's a lot of cargo. and not far from the 1 million TEU unit mark. This is a year-on-year increase of more than 27% compared to October of 2019. It is the best single month in our port's 114-year history, breaking the previous record set just a few months back in August. For the last 4 months, the port has averaged more than 920,000 container units each month, a dramatic turnaround from the first 6 months of 2020 when we averaged just over 627,000 units. We welcomed 97 container ships in October and had an additional 16 extra loaders to meet the high demand, along with only 2 canceled sailings this month. Year to date, we have witnessed 68 of those blank sailings and added back just 47 additional ships. So we've come back about 2/3 of the way from a dismal first half of 2020 on those cancellations. After the following 11 months of year-on-year cargo declines, we have now strung together 3 months in a row of year-on-year growth. October itself followed a pattern in recent months: replenishment of warehouse and distribution center inventories, along with preparation for an expected surge in holiday shopping, particularly online and at-curb service, along with in-store pickups. For October, imports reached a staggering 506,613 TEUs, a 29% jump over last October and just shy over the record that was set in August as well. However, even with a 4-month import surge, year-to-date our import eastbound volume is still down 2% compared to last year. For the first time in a while, exports came in with a modest 2+% increase at more than 143,000 TEUs. Yet, year-to-date, exports are still down almost 14% year-on-year, and we have dropped in this category 22 out of the last 24 months. Empty containers reached a single-month record of 330,180 TEUs. That's a nearly 40% increase compared to October of last year, and it is also, sadly, more than double the amount of loaded exports that departed our docks. Year-to-date through October, the Port of Los Angeles is tracking more than 5% behind 2019, but that is truly remarkable, because you may remember at the end of May, we were down nearly 19% compared to last year. And as we looked into the abyss back in March, moving only 450,000 container units, we've started to see the efficiencies move forward as we're now averaging 45% more cargo flow than the average of our first 6 months. From the San Pedro Bay perspective, both ports had a strong October, and volume was up more than 22% compared to last year. But year-to-date, the twin ports combined are down 2% compared to 2019. With this heavy volume, there's a lot of work on our docks. And week 47 ending on November 13th, we had a total shift count in the ports of LA and Long Beach of nearly 50,000. Year-to-date, though, our shift counts are down 7% compared to the same time frame last year. And that means that we've lost 145,000 labor shifts year over year, and that will not be made up in 2020. Also, year-to-date, we're down 9% when compared to the all-important 3.5-year running average. But the trend for the last 16 weeks above that important blue line continues to be favorable. Looking ahead, you may recall at last month's news conference, I estimated that October volume would total about 950,000 container units. We are able to forecast more accurately with great data and hardworking staff that have become adept at analyzing the port optimizer, the signal, and other market information. Many industry stakeholders, including journalists, have told me that they're now using the signal data that the Port of Los Angeles is providing free to the marketplace. If you'd like to subscribe to the signal, please sign up at signal.portoptimizer.com. The signal data also indicates that November volume is looking strong. Depending on a variety of factors from origin to destination, we may approach 900,000 20-foot equivalent units for the month, which would represent about a 23% increase from last November. Much, however, does depend on the fluidity of the supply chain and the ability to get the ships in and out of berth. And just as a note, the last 2 months we've averaged 7 ships and 85,000 TEUs each that have shifted from 1 month to the next. Our early estimate for December is approximately 835,000 TEUs, which would be about a 12% spike over December of 19. But also, please remember, we hit a real cliff in the fourth quarter of 2019 following the rush of imports that tried to avoid the taxation of future tariffs against China trade. That 16% decline is what we're now comparing the fourth quarter of 2020 against today. Using these projections, our current 2020 year-end estimate is approximately 9.1 million TEUs, which would come in about 2% lower than last year. And again, where we looked where we were earlier this year, I don't think many would have projected this type of an outcome and the jobs that are also created with this volume increase. As we begin to evaluate January cargo through the optimizer signal and our other industry work, please note that there are still scheduling gaps in the liner shipping industry as I report to you today. So it's a bit early to give solid estimates on January volume, but we will keep you posted as the market fine-tunes. There are many variables that will have an impact on the economy and global trade as we move into the year 2021. First and foremost is the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the public health data points, along with progress to eventually curb this illness and eradicate the virus. At this time, I'd like to welcome back our ILWU labor leaders, Frank Ponce De Leon, Ramon Ponce De Leon, Mike Podue, and Danny Miranda. Gentlemen, thank you again for taking time out of your schedules to join us here today. And I'd like to start with Danny Miranda, who represents Local 94, the Foremen. Danny, could you take just a moment here to describe to our audience the makeup of the ILWU, your organization structure, and most importantly, your great history?
Thank you, Gene. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to join you today, and we'd like to thank Mayor Garcetti as well for this invitation. We look forward to this and continued partnership with you and the Port of Los Angeles. Everyone who lives in Southern California sees the huge port cranes and the ships in the horizon. It's an impressive sight, and I'm proud to have worked on the docks the last 36 years as a member and an officer of the ILWU. Many of us who work on the docks have heard firsthand accounts of what longshore work was like before the ILWU formed in 1934. Before the union empowered workers to negotiate for safety, working conditions, wages, benefits, employers paid no attention to the needs of dock workers, often putting our lives at risk. Dock workers organized for decades, continually undermined by the employers until we united in the historic strike in 1934. Several workers were killed in 1934, including here in San Pedro, San Francisco, and the Pacific Northwest. The men who died formed our union, and we commemorate that every year on July 5th, an event we call Bloody Thursday, and for their sacrifice, our union will never, never forget. Since 1934, the ILWU has worked nonstop to protect and improve the lives of the men and women who work hard every day to move cargo. We believe in America where a person who works hard and paid a good family wage should be able to take their children to a doctor, retire with dignity without being dependent on others. Our wages and our benefits are not paid by taxpayers, but they are by private corporations that operate globally. Every cent we earn is a plus to our local economy. Workplace safety is our top priority. Our industry is inherently dangerous, and we want everyone who works on the waterfront to be able to go home to their families at the end of the day. The ILWU members, we take pride in supporting our community with our wages and the charitable giving we support on every holiday, including this Thanksgiving next week with our annual turkey giveaway. This year we've been able to dig into our pockets, because we've been essential workers and been able to work on the docks and provide meals to frontline responders during this pandemic. We have donated and delivered over 6,000 meals to firefighters and volunteers, workers at various COVID-19 testing sites, including Dodger Stadium twice. And the healthcare workers at several hospitals where when we get injured on these jobs, support us and our families. St. Mary's, Harbor General, and the Memorial Hospital chain. We are proud of the record-breaking results that you put forward today in your presentation on the cargo we moved this year. And Gene, we look forward to continue that tradition as we have in the past and ongoing from now and moving forward. So thank you again for this opportunity. It's really exciting for us, and we're here 100% to support and work as a partnership with the Port of Los Angeles and you and your administration. Thanks again, Gene.
Thank you, Danny. We know that, and we're anxiously awaiting to partner with you in a better 2021. Thank you. We'll move next to Frank Ponce De Leon, who is an International Coast Committeeman, and he's known as the numbers guy. Does a lot of work in the contracting space and knows our industry trends like no other. Frank, could you build a little bit upon what we've talked about here today with respect to all the cargo that's moving through our San Pedro Bay ports?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Gene, for the invitation on using this platform to get the story out and let people know what the ILWU is all about. We've had a lot of people thanking us for our work during this pandemic. People who normally don't think about their goods, where their goods come from, are now paying attention. Everything we need is shipped from somewhere else, whether it's PPE, ventilators, refrigerated medications, home office equipment, you name it. That all comes from somewhere else. And the longshore workers are on the front lines of getting the essential goods on and off the ship each and every day. Someone just recently said that we're the first responders on the docks, which I thought that was pretty good. Not only are we working through the pandemic, but we are working on harder than ever. The West Coast ports have been breaking records the past 3 months, and the Port of Los Angeles is at the top of that list. That cargo doesn't move itself. It doesn't magically discharge or load to and from vessels. It's done with the hard work of by the ILWU. And I apologize. I gotta, so I don't get this wrong. You posted numbers over the last 3 months that we're looking at, and these are record-breaking numbers for the months, and they're very impressive. In July, the Port of Los Angeles moved 856,389 TEUs. It was the second best July in the port's 114-year history. In August, we proceeded to move 961,833 TEUs, including more than 500,000 TEUs, import TEUs for the first time ever. In September, we followed that up again. We moved 883,625 TEUs, which represented a 13.3 increase compared to 2019. It was the busiest September in the history of the Port of Los Angeles. And these are astonishing numbers. And the number that you stated today for October was 980,729. Every single one of those TEUs was handled and touched by a longshoreman working on the docks, and they should be applauded. Not only are we working through the pandemic, but I have confidence in the maintenance and the growth of the West Coast ports, particularly here in Southern California, which is my home port. I'm from Local 13. This continues to be a major premier gateway to the United States. West Coast ports will always be the closest ports to Asia, and we have invested in the infrastructure necessary to handle the latest generations of vessels. These record-breaking months show that even during difficult times, we have the infrastructure, we have the proximity to Asia, and we have the ILW workforce to make sure that cargo moves so that we can get the goods and services to people across our nation. In closing, I'd like to just say that I'd like to thank the brothers and sisters of Locals 13, 63, and 94 and our casual workforce for their continued support in moving the world one container at a time. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving to all and be safe and be well and stay safe. And Gene, thank you for the opportunity to give my address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, and so well put based on your great experience here at our ports and what your leadership looks like at the coast level. Thank you. I'll shift over now to Mike Podue, Local 63 President for the Marine Clerks. Mike, you and I have worked in Washington together on several committees and continue to do so. The work of the Marine Clerks and the other locals is so important to this port, but you've also had other responsibilities, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Would you talk a little bit about the health and safety and what steps the ILWU has taken along with others in the supply chain to make it a better workplace?
Yeah, I sure will, Gene. Good morning, and thank you, everybody. And like my previous brothers had said, thank you, Gene, for this opportunity to let everybody know a little bit about what the ILWU is and how we're working in partnership with everybody down here in the San Pedro Bay Ports Complex. COVID-19, and I'll start off this way. And it's always a pleasure working with you in Washington too, Gene. I appreciate that. But it's a team effort. Our concerns here in the port, it's been a big challenge for the ILWU members here in the ports of LA, Long Beach. But we're not solo here. It's an epidemic that's touched everybody across this nation, across the world. And starting off, when this started off earlier part of the year, there was a big concern about making our members safe. Part of the ILWU and a big portion of the ILWU, and one of the other committees I sit on as chairman of the Coast Safety Committee for the entire West Coast, is the health and safety of our membership. That's been primary throughout our history. So, and believe me, we didn't call ourselves essential workers when this all started way back in January, when everything went down and started locking down in March. But we knew we were frontline workers. When the cargo started coming back in after China slowed down because of the outbreak there, we knew that this country was in trouble. And we know that the men and women of the ILWU are going to be right there loading and discharging all these essential goods that are important for this country, not just for the area, but the entire nation. So one of our primary concerns is making sure those frontline workers their health and safety is protected. So some of the things that we did to initiate this, and I want everybody to realize too, the ILWU out there, we have children out there that can't go to school right now. They're on platforms like this going to school. Daycare centers are closed. We've got people down here that are high risk because of their age, just like everybody else across the country. And we have people that are on the spectrum because of whatever other issues they may have. That could turn into something devastating. So our primary concern is the health and welfare of the men and women of the ILWU, as well as the people across this country. So one of the things that we did initially was trying to procure that PPE that's going to help protect the men and women down here. And of course, that was our primary concern. What some of the things that we did down here in this port complex, as well as coastwide, we just didn't do it down here in LA, Long Beach. This went up and down the entire coast. But primarily here in Long Beach, where we made some adjustments to our dispatch to make sure that there was social distancing between our members, because we're unique to other industries across the country, that we have dispatch halls and our members are dispatched to the job. So we made sure they had the proper masks and that they did social distancing at the dispatch halls. Some of our meetings that we normally do, just like we're doing today, we put our meetings online, and we meet online with whether it be the employer, with our other locals here. We meet with our employers on a regular basis here in the Port of LA. Every Monday we have a phone call to talk about COVID. Sometimes we talk with our employers daily, right? And one of the primary things is making sure our equipment's clean. Gene, you know as well as I do, the LA complex is huge. You know, Danny talked about it earlier, about seeing the cranes when you come to the port. We work around the clock here in the Port of LA and in the San Pedro Bay complex. So making sure that that equipment is clean between each shift is primary concern of us. Thank Frank at the coast level for making sure that this is followed coast wide. We have a lot of equipment out there, trucks that our ILWU Longshore members use, clerks trucks that have to be cleaned between each shift, our workstations. I'm a clerk. I sit here, work at a computer all day long when I'm not in office. So we got to make sure that those areas are clean for our members to make sure they're safe. The other thing that we instituted as well was a contact tracing. And that's a big thing. And we work in conjunction and partnership with our employer on that. And I want to thank our employer for that, because everybody you see here today, if a member becomes sick, and we know how this virus is, it spreads rapidly. We have a procedure in place where those individuals are traced, who they came into contact with. We follow CDC guidelines here in the Port of LA, and follow all those to make sure our members are safe. But again, I want to say this is not something that was done alone. It's a team effort. And first and foremost, Gene, I want to thank you, your staff at the Port of Los Angeles. Early on when this all happened, I want to thank Governor Newsom. I want to thank Mayor Garcetti. When this first started, we needed this equipment. You were one of the main individuals, Gene, that made sure that we got the proper PPE so the men and women of the ILW can work and bring those goods into this country, into this state. And I want to thank Chief Gazy. Without him, the Los Angeles Fire Department and all those individuals, it's got to be a team effort. We're fighting a virus that's affecting everybody in this country. We want to make sure that the goods of this country come through the Port of LA and the San Pedro Bay ports and continue that. Hey, look, we're breaking records right now. We're breaking records right now. And it's going to take a toll on our membership. But we got to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that necessary equipment gets to the doctors and the nurses and the people out there across this country in a safe, efficient manner. So we're going to continue to break records. We're going to continue to supply the men and women of the ILW to do it. But we're going to make sure let me put it this way. We've had plenty of help from the state level. Thank you, California. From our local government agencies, from the city of Los Angeles, and hopefully when the new administration gets into office, we'll have something across this nation that's going to protect the men and women across the country. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And it's because of the work that you have done to date that the Employers Association has committed $1 million a week to make sure we have the right people out on the docks, the right cleaning solutions, sanitizing policy in place. And that was all done because of what you guys had talked about early on. And in addition to that, all three locals are now averaging more than 5 days of work per week by the rank and file members. And that is a testament to the work ethic that the ILW has to move all this cargo. And they're working as hard as they can to do just that because of the leadership right here today. Thank you, Mike. And last, I'll move over to Ramon Ponce De Leon, President, Local 13, in charge of Longshore and Mechanics. Ramon, talk to us a little bit about the necessary conversations that we must continue around port competitiveness here in Southern California.
Sure will, Gene. Thank you, Gene, for having us on again. We appreciate it. I'd like to thank the pensioners for first paving the way for this industry, what they've done for us, and those who've lost their lives, especially on the job. God bless their families. So I'd like to just say that to start off. And last but not least, but I want to shout out to Local 13 members for their continued work through this pandemic. Working day and night, 24/7. And because of their hard work, they're the heart of the harbor. They've helped the Port of Los Angeles break a record this last quarter, from June to September. Their best record in history, from what I understand. So I'd like to give them a shout out and thank you for your job well done. And the first thing I want to do is clear the air about our history. Now, longshoremen are proud. And when we do something, we own it. So for the past almost 9 decades, that there's only been two work disruptions, 2 stoppages. The first one was a strike in 1971. We went on strike, the ILWU. The one and only time in 9 decades, almost 9 decades, that we have shut down the port. Never have we done it again. The 2002, contrary to popular belief, was a lockout. It's like the employers going on strike. It wasn't the ILWU. We were willing to go to work. We were sitting at the negotiating table, but that wasn't us. So as far as competitiveness and what we are and what we're about, that's not us. If we're going to, like I said, ILWU, we're proud, we'll own it, and you'll know it. So, but since that 2000, there was a 15% loss of discretionary cargo, but the volumes have increased and our membership is up 60%. So we're in a bit of work here, but this is something what we need to continue to talk about, this discretionary cargo that you've mentioned before quite often, Gene. Now, it's just not us that's involved in this. Now, ILW, we move it. We move the cargo on the docks, but there has to be an understanding that it's got to be a cohesive strategy with warehouse, trucking companies, the terminal operators. They got to get together. The chassis issue has to get resolved. The railroads, I understand that they're going through some of the growing pains also with the surge of cargo. We are lacking gondolas, empty gondolas to move this cargo on the rail. You know, we work every day with our employers. We have a good relationship, especially with the local employers here. We work daily with them, as Mike has mentioned earlier. Right in August, when this unforeseen surge of cargo came, the employers immediately came to us and said, hey, we're going to need some skilled labor on these cranes. So we sat together, not discounting any safety protocols, and expedited some crane training process to get the skilled labor on the job. Fantastic work. It was great working with the local PMA, and we were able to accomplish that. We're still doing that right now to better our move counts and to get this cargo in and out of the docks. Now, we work with them also on the dispatch and manpower reports. And there's 3 operations. There's the vessel, there's the yard, and then there's the rail. So we coordinate with them to order the manpower. Now, we can control the vessel, but the other entities, that all the other stakeholders have to help us with the chassis and the yards. And that's something that you've been spearheading, that show great leadership in leading. We appreciate it, Gene. Now we understand ILWU, we understand what it means to be competitive. Now, normally longshore workers, the employer gives us a job, we go to work. But we're playing a different role here, and we appreciate you having us on, Gene, to let people know that we do understand what the needs are for this port in this area to be competitive, to bring the goods in and out of these ports. And so we're committed to continually finding ways to complete that task. And we will always maintain an open door policy to the port authorities, especially since you're there, Gene, and have been very cooperative with the ILWU. So we appreciate the time, and thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ramon, and thanks to all you guys. We're going to move forward now to the next section where we open up Q&A to the journalist community. Do you guys have time to stick around with us for some questions from the media? That would be great. Yeah, if you could stick with us just till the top of the hour, that would be fantastic. Great. So back to Philip Sandfield. Philip?
Okay, the first question is from Dorothy Crouch, the managing editor of California Apparel News. This question is for Gene, and she's asking what the Biden presidency would mean to the Port of LA and container trade, and perhaps the union may want to weigh in as well.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Dorothy. Great question. You know, container trade is so important to all of us. 90% of goods move on water today. And our nation's ports contribute about 26% of the total GDP in the country. So the work that we do, the Longshore, the administrators like myself, truck drivers, railroads, and so many others, really are the heartbeat of this nation's trade. What I expect to happen is that we'll have a seat at the table. We'll be able to redevelop relationships at executive and senior levels, very similar to what we participated in during the Obama administration. And I like our chances to get topics of importance to all of our stakeholders, including labor, employers, and many others, in front of the administration so we could talk about how to grow trade and create jobs. Thank you for the question, Dorothy.
A follow-up to that was from Jeff Berman at Peerless Media asking on the Biden administration, do we have any thoughts on impact specifically regarding trade and tariffs, infrastructure, and regulations?
Sure. There'll be a long list of items to discuss with the incoming administration and their leadership. I have long advocated against the tariff regime and the weaponization that was used for, and the obvious impact that it's had on trade. So there'll be a number of issues. I'll turn it back over to the guys on this important question about the incoming administration.
Well, I guess I can go ahead and start, Gene. I'm looking forward to it, honestly. Like you said, the restricting and what this current administration has done, I think, has been harmful to trade in this country, period, especially here in LA Long Beach with the China trade that we have. But looking forward, I'm looking forward to infrastructure agreements in Washington to get the much needed here in LA infrastructure monies that we need to make this port complex flow. And we will be. I'm on several committees, legislative. We'll be back in Washington D.C. and pushing those programs and searching for that money. I can go into HMT and all of that, and I know that wasn't the question. But a lot of that has affected this port complex here in LA. We're a donor port that gives money to other ports that it's not quite fair. We put the most money in, and we need that money to come back here to make the infrastructure better here in the port complex here.
Well put. Thanks, Mike. Philip?
Yes, the next question is for the leaders of the ILWU. They're asking, to what extent has the need for social distancing and increased cleaning of equipment in the pandemic slowed productivity at marine terminals?
Maybe we start with Mike.
It hasn't affected it whatsoever. Now, we did make a shift, an agreement to push back our start times to allow for some cleaning protocols. But as far as productivity, it hasn't slowed it down. We start at 7 o'clock and everybody gets going. Just so everybody knows, we are trying to go back to a normal start because we know it's affecting our BCOs and everybody else out there because we're working later till 4 o'clock in the morning now. So we're trying to get back. But what that's going to take is, and we're working, with our Coast Committee. Frank is working with at his level, and at the Safety Committee level, we're trying to get products out there that are scientifically proven that will help eliminate the need, and not get into the details on it, but we're looking for other avenues to protect our members as well as getting back to a normal start time. But to answer the question, it's not affecting productivity.
All I have to say is we just broke a record last quarter. So that's enough said. Thank you.
At the coast level, when this thing first broke out, we've instituted measures up and down the coast for safety precautions. And back then, when this thing was fluid, we tried to do the best we could. We are now looking for some exemptions on on better disinfection products for cleaning. And as soon as we get there, I think that we can get back to the 6 p.m. shift, our regular starts on the 6 p.m. shifts. I know that's disrupted the chain a little bit, but we've been pushing since March and April for alternate ways to clean and to get the shifts started on normal time. So we have looked at that. We want to make sure that before we move off the protocols that we have in place, that the safety of our members are first and foremost at hand, and that we can continue to move cargo on a regular shift. So we have looked at that. Hopefully, we've been working with PMA. We do have some applications now to get that changed. So, but like Ramon said, slowing down cargo, we're still breaking records. So we're moving and we're working on it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me make a comment.
Sure.
One of the things that we do that is very important is every Monday, Mike touched on it. We meet with our employer and have a conference call every Monday to go over what we can do to move forward to make sure that we continue to monitor the social distancing. And we've worked well with them. And, they get a little bit of credit as well because we've worked collectively to move forward on making sure our members are social distance and we're able to start our jobs on time. So we appreciate that as well.
Good point, Danny. And in addition to these four leaders, great credit needs to go to International President Willie Adams and CEO of the PMA Jim McKenna for convening those early discussions and getting the input right on the ground all the way through the membership. Very important to note. Philip?
From Kim Link Wills at Freightwaves for Gene. Earlier this week, a coalition of truckers, shippers, and customs brokers called for the Federal Maritime Commission to consider an immediate suspension of detention and demurrage charges at LA Long Beach and New York, New Jersey due to congestion. What are your thoughts on this request?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kim, and appreciate you always attending these press conferences. Demurrage and detention are not meant, again, to be weaponized. This is a transit facility, if you will. It's not meant to be a storage facility for containers, and that's how we're all geared to moving cargo through this port to get it to our customer's door, to the store shelves, into our homes of the American consumer. Exceptions have to be made, and that's up to the marine terminal operator, the liner shipping company. If a container is not accessible for the trucker during that shift for whatever reason, and especially in times with surge cargo like this, exceptions should be made. But we cannot just sit back and look and say it's got to be one size fits all. That's not the way the industry works. So we'll continue, and we've pledged our investment in time, effort, and resources to help work through this issue. We'll be as supportive of the FMC as always, as most of us in the industry always are. And we'll continue to work through to get to the root cause and make sure that we do things. But again, just taking one swing of the bat at this is probably not going to be the solution. We need to work on the velocity of the equipment, the digitization of information. Again, the order cycle process for all of these goods coming in now is typically between 90 and 120 days. So the merchandiser at the retail company knows that far out how much they're trying to order. And if we can get a line of sight on those orders as they get developed into the factory as finished goods, the truck coming to the port in Shanghai as an example where I used to work, and then coming over here to Los Angeles. With the Port Optimizer today, we've got 10 to 14 days advance notice. Imagine if we could have 90 days advance notice on the strength of demand, so we could deploy the skilled and talented labor, get the assets in place, and have a line of sight on how quickly we've got to move this cargo with all health and safety respect, so we're not bunching up at one time, and we can get these ships on schedule back to Asia. So there's a lot of work to do here, and it's a bigger picture than just this one piece, but we have dedicated our time to the HTA, to the FMC. We want to be at the table with those discussions as well.
Thank you. The follow-up question from Sarah Fuller at Supply Chain Dive. Is the Port of LA frustrated with ocean carriers' inability to provide more than 24 hours notice of when where an empty container should go? Does this hinder POLA's port optimization efforts?
It's a good question, Sarah, again, and we appreciate it. The supply chain is about creating solutions, and that's what logisticians will tell you. That's what Longshore members will tell you. It's how to fit. Not one of these surges has been identical since I've been here. They all have different makeup and different variables in the equation. But that's part of the reason why, in talking with the HTA, with Longshore and others, we developed the Port Optimizer. Then we went to the signal, and now the return signal. So we can give the truck community a line of sight on what type and size of container and where they can bring it back to on the empty basis. So no, to answer your question straightforward, we don't get frustrated. This is still a relationship-based business. Even though we're doing it only in 2 dimensions now via most of these video and telephone meetings, these relationships have been in place for years and decades. And we'll continue to work through the issues because that's what our customers and stakeholders require of us.
Thank you. The next question comes from Craig Feiner at KNX 1070 Radio. what does Gene believe is driving the increase in cargo traffic? What this year versus last year in terms of what type of products consumers may be buying given the economic pandemic-related shutdown? You began to talk about it a bit. He said he'd like to have his listeners understand why the Port of LA sustained good transportation numbers when many might have guessed it would have been hit hard because of economic issues.
Good to hear from you, Craig, as always, and we appreciate the support of the KNX listeners. Couple things in this question. Number one, our buying patterns as U.S. consumers have changed dramatically. We're no longer going to ball games. We're not going to the movies. We didn't go on summer vacations on airplanes. We're not staying at hotels. We're not spending money on services. And so most of us are going to the big box retailer, the home improvement store, and we sure are buying a lot more online. I know I've never been decked out more with LSU gear than I am right now because I've been able to buy on the web. But that being said, it requires a lot more fulfillment because we're buying that many more goods. So that's the surge in a nutshell. Are we surprised by this? Yeah, because I remember you and me talking back in March right here on Terminal Island. And we didn't know that even though we were at 85% of normal volume, what this pandemic was going to bring us. But as we started looking into the data, talking to the different peers within the supply chain, we saw this coming. And we even said back in April that there would probably be 3 swings of the pendulum. First, we had to get the empties out of here, and MSC, the great shipping company out of Geneva, brought in those ultra-large container vessels to help us evacuate the empties. And then beginning with the Isabella, we started to see what we really could do with respect to moving cargo on and off these big ships. Over 34,000 TEUs were moved on and off that vessel by the Longshore men and women. So that was a real testament to our level of focus even around the pandemic. And then your third piece to this question, what are folks buying? Well, you know, it's pretty amazing, but we're buying sporting goods. The gyms are closed. So whatever we like to do, whether we run, whether we go play golf, whether we're buying Peloton bikes, the numbers are up sharply on that. Furniture. Some people are setting up home offices to do the telecommuting. Others are setting up outdoor decks so they can be physically distanced. And a litany of other products in the apparel market in addition to the athleisure wear, as it's now being called. Lastly, home appliances and home electronics. Folks are home more, they're doing some upgrades, maybe replacing the washer and dryer, having electronics so they can stream live on TV. The 4K systems are really going in a good sales direction as well. So that's been some of our research that we've done, but great question, Craig, and good to hear from you.
We're getting close to the end of the hour here. A question, perhaps the final one from Jeff Berman. He's asking, given how unusual things have been in 2020 due to the pandemic, are there any particular lesson learned or potentially permanent things the industry may see in the coming years?
Sure. And I think we've touched on them, but to kind of capsulize, I think data is going to be the key. And we got to know what's coming at us so we can be prepared. And it's got to be across sections. It can't leave the worker behind. It can't leave people with blind spots. We've got to be prepared. Second, it is exactly that this is a relationship-based business. And with all the smarts that we've got, especially here in Southern California, this is one of the great talent basins of the supply chain industry. From the longshore to the logistics people, to the warehouse, the truckers, and the forwarders and brokers. We have more than 400 companies represented here in Southern California alone. This really is a strong, strong area for logistics know-how and capabilities, and has been for generations. Going forward, we're going to have to see things, and that's why we created, through the mayor's leadership, Logistics Victory Los Angeles, and the ability to get the PPE and the medical grade supplies to our frontline workers, whether they be on the docks, in hospitals, or on our farming communities, as witnessed by the donation by CMA CGM earlier this year. So yes, there's a lot we could take away from it, a lot that reinforces, that gives us the belief in our fellow colleagues and the great work that they do. Thanks for the question, Sean.
At this point, I think we can conclude the questions and move on to the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you guys for participating. In closing, next week we will celebrate a very unique Thanksgiving here in the United States. Few of us will be flying or traveling. Large family gatherings have been discouraged. Despite all these challenges, we have so much to be grateful for. I am absolutely privileged to lead America's port and hopefully play a small role here in Los Angeles to help shape shipping and global trade jobs creation. I'm thankful for the nearly 100,000 folks who go to work every day at this port locally on our docks. And those folks have been delivering goods to each and every one of our 435 congressional districts throughout this pandemic without stop. The women and men of the ILWU, our truck drivers, terminal operators, harbor department staff, and so many others who we partner with every day of the year, thank you. I do have a deep appreciation for all of our frontline healthcare workers. Through the volunteer efforts of Logistics Victory Los Angeles and our volunteer team, I am so proud to share with everyone today that we've been able to distribute more than 3.1 million units of personal protective equipment and other supplies to more than 36 Los Angeles area hospitals and 150 skilled nursing facilities. I'm also heartened by the generosity of so many of our partners who have made a difference with their donations via Love LA. Companies like shipping giant CMA CGM, the Apple Corporation, Harbor Freight Tools right here in Southern California, Operation USA of Wilmington, and Toyota, in addition to so many others. I also want to express my appreciation to all of you dedicated journalists who cover the global trade and do so in such a professional manner. I hope you get some time to relax and reflect at some point next week. Happy Thanksgiving, and please stay safe, everyone.